Welcome to the Krista Redpath Show, where sports take center stage and stories come to life. I'm your host, Krista, veteran analyst and passionate storyteller, bringing you weekly in-depth conversations and sharp analysis across the world of sports. The Krista Redpath Show, breaking down the game, elevating the story, and championing the female voice. To listen to the complete recording of this show, please visit KristaRedpathMedia.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Today's show is proudly brought to you by Vertical Raise, your premier online fundraising platform. A clear, concise message with the best technology interface. To learn more about Vertical Raise, please visit verticalraise406.com. This week on the Krista Redpath Show, I'm taking you around the Big Sky in women's hoops, and our next stop is in Moscow, Idaho. Today, I'm joined by one of the most unique and exciting rising leaders in all of college basketball, the 11th head coach in the University of Idaho women's basketball history, and the first ever Brazilian head coach in NCAA Division I history, Arthur Moreira. In his first season at the helm of the Vandals, Coach Moreira made immediate history, leading Idaho to 18 wins, the most ever by a first-year head coach in program history. Even more impressive, his team quickly became one of the elite defensive units in the entire nation, ranking top 10 nationally in opponent field goal percentage, top 5 in defensive rebounding, and top 11 in total rebounds. An exceptional recruiter with a global basketball lens, Coach Moreira has reshaped the trajectory of Idaho women's basketball with nationally ranked recruits, elite transfers, and an international pipeline unlike anything the program has seen before. From Brazil to the Big Sky Conference, from associate head coach to historic program builder, who in his inaugural season led Idaho to a number 3 seed in the Big Sky tournament. This is a powerful story, and it's just getting started. Coach Moreira, thank you so much for taking time with me today. Welcome into the Krista Redpath Show.
Thank you so much for having me. Like we talked a little bit before, I've been listening to the shows. You've been doing a great job. I love that women's basketball has somebody like you to cover the Big Sky and give these programs a space to shine. So
when you hear that journey read out loud just now, Coach Moreira, from Brazil to the Big Sky Conference, what goes through your mind?
Well, the first thing that goes through my mind is whenever the show comes out, I got to send it to my mom.
I love that. Oh, this is great, for sure.
You made it sound pretty good there, so I think my mom's going to like that.
Yes.
You know, it's been a quick but very long journey at the same time. You know, I feel like my career path and all the challenges we had to overcome, from coaching to coaching men to women, and then obviously all the immigration process in between. So it was quick in time, but it feels like it was a really long ride.
You grew up in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. So that's a major inland city, located in the mountains of southeastern Brazil. I mean, just beautiful. When I looked at pictures, it's a massive population, like 2.7 million people. Yep. But it really feels like it's a city that's live with culture. And I know that you think about soccer when you think of Brazil. I mean, there's just no way around it, right? I mean, you're the only nation to have played in every FIFA World Cup. You've won 5 of those. So inherently, you do think about soccer, but what I don't think listeners or viewers realize is how big of a basketball community Brazil is. And you've had success both on the women's and men's side of it. So was basketball something early on, Coach Moreira, that captivated you, or did you start with soccer?
Yeah, I feel like every single Brazilian kid, I did start with soccer. You know, my hometown is big, but it's known for being one of the safest big cities in Brazil. You know, the crime rate is really low, so I was lucky that I got to experience all the positives of being a big city, but without a lot of the negatives. But like every other kid, I did start playing soccer. I was a defender first, and I became a goalie because I wasn't very good with my feet. Had a lot of success on that, actually, and then it wasn't until... I want to say maybe 2002 that I picked up basketball. So it was kind of late. I was already 12 or 13 years old. And we had we had a few Brazilians that played in the NBA, but at that point we didn't have anybody that had a lot of success. They came after. So what drew me to the sport is when I first watched on ESPN the very first episode of the N1 mixtape tour.
Great. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I watched that when it first came out, and then at the time I was really focused on soccer. I was playing for a really good team as a goalie. I played futsal as well, which is indoor soccer. And then I watched that episode. I was like, man, basketball is really fun, you know. So, and I was already taller. I started growing pretty early. I like to joke that after 14 years old, I haven't grown an inch. So I was one of the tallest kids in JV.
So what did
So
basketball look like for you as a kid? Did you play on a club team, or did you have to seek that out, or was it part of your schooling?
yeah, I started playing with our school team,
Okay.
which wasn't very good. Overseas, it's different than here, so the high school leagues are not very strong. All the good players end up playing for clubs. So when I first picked up, my PE professor, actually, PE teacher at the time, he said, "You're pretty tall, you're really physical, you know, you're pretty athletic. You should try basketball." He was a former basketball player. He was 6'9", he played professionally. So I started playing his class, and then I joined the school team. And then 2 years later, I ended up joining a club team, which was the best club team in my area and one of the best club teams in the country. We had two that would become eventually NBA players on that team, which is rare to find that in the U.S. for a high school team. Imagine overseas having a club team with two guys that made the NBA in one team. So it had a lot of success there. I was with them for 5 years, and we lost 2 games in 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did basketball, was it part of your family? Was your family interested in it? Or they're like, Arthur, you're going out on an edge here. Where's this basketball coming from?
Nobody liked basketball. Nobody played basketball. My dad was a tennis player. He played all the way up to high school. And then my mom was the gymnast.
Okay.
So there was no links to basketball. My uncle was probably the one that played at the highest level sports-wise. He played 3 years of professional soccer in the Brazilian First Division, which is the highest. And then he stopped playing for some injuries. But it was literally watching N1 mixtape tour. I turned to my dad. I was like, I kind of want to do that. That looks fun. And then I had my PE teacher. His name was Mauro. He's the one that kind of got me hooked into basketball. And my complaint with soccer is that there is no contact. I'm a pretty calm person, but I love, hitting people. And I like to say that if we had American football out there, I probably would have been a football player.
Well, Arthur, I say the same thing. Soccer to me, and I spent a year playing professionally in Denmark, so I was around a lot of like really world-class soccer. But I feel like why the fans get so frustrated is there's just not as much action. So that's
Right.
why they're yelling at each other and there's fights that break out and all these crazy things. So I feel like it's a contact sport, but not really. Like basketball, you can really get after it.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So yeah, once I started playing, I fell in love with it, and I immediately stopped playing soccer. It was actually my family, my friends weren't very happy with it because I was a pretty good goalie, and then I kind of gave up a sport that I was good at for something that I've never played and I wasn't very good at, But it just felt right at the time, and ever since I switched over, I got hooked on it. I made my dad buy the very first NBA League Pass so we could watch some NBA games, and then the rest is history from there.
So you attended, I'm going to really work on making sure I get your pronunciations right, but Colegio Marista Dom Siverio. So that
Yeah,
was
that's pretty good.
was that your high school?
Yeah, so in Brazil it's a little different. A lot of the schools, they have high school, they have elementary school. It's not uncommon for you to stay in the same school all throughout your academic career. So I started going there in 99, and then I stayed all throughout high school and graduated from there. It's one of the biggest schools in my hometown. It was a private school. I was lucky that because my dad had some connections in there, we had a scholarship and we could afford to go to school there. But it's a Catholic school, even though, the religion hasn't been as big a part of my family. But I went to Catholic school. I worked at a Catholic school, and University of Idaho is the first time I haven't really been around a religious institution. So
You made your way to Sonoma State. So how was that getting over to the U.S.? Was it the path of I want to get over to the United States to study? Was coaching aspirations? I mean, I know you studied business marketing, but where did that drive come to come into the U.S.?
Yeah, so ever since I started playing basketball, I dreamed of coming here and being around college basketball. I started watching the NCAA tournament. I think it was around my freshman year of high school that ESPN started broadcasting college games. And I thought it was way cooler than the NBA, to see the fans and how passionate people are and the students like painting their bodies. You don't see that in NBA games, right? But you did it in college basketball. So it was a dream of mine to be able to come and play. My senior year of high school, In Brazil, when you're a senior, you have to take university entry exams, a little bit like the SAT. But back then, when I was in high school, every university had their own exams. So if you want to go, let's say, to the University of Idaho in Brazil, they have their own entry exam. And then University of Montana would have their own entry exam. It wasn't a general one like the SAT or the ACT like you guys have here. Now it is. Now Brazil kind of made it one test, but back then it wasn't. So I got admitted into Sonoma State pretty early. I was looking for schools that had a good international student population, that were affordable. Out-of-state tuition is tricky for international students.
Very pricey.
I had a little bit of very pricey. And I had a little bit of an academic scholarship to Sonoma as well. So I ended up picking Sonoma State. I got admitted early. The academic year in Brazil ends in December, and I wasn't going to start school until the fall. So pretty much by the fall of my last year of high school, I already knew I was going to go to school in the U.S., so I didn't really have to prepare for those entry exams that the universities in Brazil require. So my senior year was pretty much all just playing basketball and making sure I passed my classes and I graduated, because I knew pretty early I was going to come to the U.S. So it's Sonoma was one of those places where I want to go somewhere with nice weather. Coming from Brazil, I was afraid of the cold. I had never seen snow at that point. But I didn't know that Northern California is pretty cold too.
It can get chilly in Northern California.
When you think about California, you think about sunshine and good weather, But my first day there, when I first got off the plane, I think it was 47 degrees, and I had never been to anything colder than 65, I think is what it was. So it was a shock to me. I was like, man, I thought I was signing up to go to the beach and it'd be nice weather. But it ended up being the best decision of my life. My years at Sonoma State, I wouldn't trade for anything.
Do you keep in touch with any of the friends that you made in college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I originally wanted to play. I tried to be a walk-on there at Sonoma State, and I realized very quickly after my freshman year that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't good enough to play. But luckily, because it is a Division II school, they didn't have a lot of help with coaching. So after my freshman year, I met with Coach Fiscaldo and Coach Rich Shaywitz at the time, and we kind of talked about it. And I was like, I'd love to stick around and be a manager, help in whatever way you guys want, be a practice player, So that's kind of what I did for my last 3 years of school. I was a manager / practice player. My senior year, they promoted me to kind of a student assistant, or I'll still go out and recruit. I don't know if before going to Sonoma, coaching was ever in my mind. My last year of high school, because I had a lot of free time, I started coaching and teaching basketball to an underprivileged community in my hometown. So in one of the slums there. And that's kind of, I got an early start in coaching. I really liked that. So after my freshman year, when I realized basketball playing wasn't going to be my future, then I think coaching became pretty natural after that.
So then from there, you spent 7 seasons at the University of San Francisco as an assistant and recruiting coordinator. That's quite a long stretch to stay in one spot. What did you learn in the WCC that directly prepared you for your coaching career?
Oh, I learned a lot. I was actually, I like to say that I failed as a director of operations and got promoted from it because I was so bad at it. My first year at USF, the head coach at the time, Molly Gunnenbauer, she's the wife of my former coach at Sonoma State. So I've known the family for, almost 16 years now. I've been around that. I used to dog sit for them. So when Molly got the USF job, I had just finished my first year as an assistant at Sonoma State and was looking for ways to stay in the U.S. and get a work visa and work at a higher level. So Molly brought me over as staff as a director of operations, and I was terrible. I was super unorganized. I messed up multiple times with that first year. So we always joke, Molly and I, that I was so bad at it that she had to move me to a different position. And I got lucky that at the end of that first season, one of our assistants, Linda Lappy, who used to be the head coach at Colorado, her dad got really sick. So she had to leave right after the season. And before we hired somebody else, there was a lot of recruiting events. And then Molly just sent me on the road. And I started calling people and talking to people. And every event Molly would go to, somebody would tell her, we met your assistant on the road the other day. And he's a very likable person, really funny, high energy. That's a good hire. When in reality, I was just filling in. So after that summer, she kind of decided to permanently make me an assistant coach. And And then very soon after that, I got in charge of recruiting. I learned a lot about coaching, a lot about recruiting. That second year at USF, we had to sign 10 new players, and there was no transfer portal yet. So I pretty much went overseas in the summer of 2017 and spent 3 months traveling around Europe. Just meeting people, making connections, recruiting. I had a lot of former friends that play professional basketball, so we made the trip very affordable. I always stay with them. Our men's team, actually, right after that, they tried to recruit internationally, and RAD told them I set a bad precedent because I spent 3 months in Europe, and we used about $1,500 of our budget. So it was super cheap, because I was always staying with my friends. I was always eating with my friends. So it made it hard for men's basketball to try to do the same. But that's when I developed all my connections. I literally cold call people. I'll look at games online and say, this player's pretty good. Let me see where she plays at. Reach out to their coach. Would visit them, meet with them. And that was how I got my start there in international recruiting.
Did you even realize then that global recruiting would end up being your calling card? Because really, that's so impressive. You recruited from 17 different countries at USF. Yeah. You increased that international recruiting immensely. You put it on the map. Did you even have any fortitude that would end up being extremely important to you as you progressed in your career?
Yeah, I figured that to break into the industry without a playing background, without a lot of connections, I would have to find a way to separate myself. And back then it wasn't, now everybody recruits overseas, but back then it was pretty rare still. It was just starting.
You were on the cutting edge of that. You were really
Right.
starting that when other programs weren't.
Right. And I think that goes back to my marketing degree. I'm always trying to find ways to stay ahead of the game and kind of be the one that breaks into tendencies. The same thing with the transfer portal. Before the transfer portal started, we had some good transfers at USF already. So I think at the mid-major level, you have to be creative, and in this business, you have to find niches to separate yourself because there's a lot of good coaches out there. I didn't know he was going to get that big, but I figured out pretty early it was going to be my way of breaking in and my way of making our program better. Because the WCC is such a good league you have Gonzaga that's always really good. Back then, BYU was a powerhouse, and it was going to be hard for us to catch up with those teams just recruiting the same kids everybody else does. Because then you're competing with St. Mary's, you're competing with Santa Clara, you're competing with LMU, San Diego, everybody's recruiting the same kids. So we had to figure out a different avenue for us, and it ended up being really good. We had a lot of success there.
So I want to talk about one player, Ana Beatriz Passos. I think that's amazing that you served as the Brazilian national team U19 at the FIBA World Cup, right? And she played for you, and then you brought her over to the U.S. Now we're jumping a little bit ahead with Idaho, and now she's going to go back and represent Brazil in 2025. How neat is that to bring a player over and give them the experience, and then they return to their home country?
Yeah, it's really cool. There's no bigger honor than to represent your country. When I got to coach at the U19 World Cup, that first game when they play the national anthem, it's a very emotional moment, and you feel a lot of pride, and you almost want to work 3 times as hard, even though you're not getting paid, right? It's just a 2-week tournament, but there's just something special about playing at that level and representing your country at that level. One of my biggest dreams is to one day coach in the Olympics, so hopefully we can do that. But when I coach Ana Bia, I was super impressed with her work ethic. Brazilian basketball is a little different, where it's very laid back.
Okay.
And a lot of times because of that, the players lack a little bit of intensity. And she's different. From the moment I got to coach her, she was always the first one in the gym, the one that would stay the longest. She would always do extra workouts. She played really, really hard, a lot of passion. So when I coach her, I was like, okay, I think this girl will translate to college basketball. She'll be a really good player eventually. And like me, she had a big goal. She wanted to be on the senior national team. She wanted to play in the Olympic Games. She wanted to play in the Senior World Cup. And I think we're getting her closer to that goal. She got to play with the national team in the Global Jam this summer. She got to play for the University Games and the Under-23 national team. So it's she's getting closer to that goal for sure.
So I do want to talk just a little bit about that Brazilian national U19 and the FIBA World Cup. What did that experience teach you about elite preparation?
That there's a lot of good players and a lot of good coaches out there. I always like to say at one point in history for basketball, European teams, they brought American coaches and they taught them the game. I feel like now it's those European coaches just develop and study so much that they're teaching us back. You can see a lot of tendencies that happen in college basketball. They first start in Europe. And same thing with the NBA. I mean, a lot of those European players are having tons of success in the NBA and the WNBA at the highest levels. So playing in that tournament kind of really opened up my mind. Like, man, there's so many different ways to guard, so many different coverages, so many different offensive strategies. I feel like I learned more in those 2 weeks than I had learned in the previous 7 years of my career, just by watching other teams, by watching Spain, watching Lithuania, watching a lot of those European powerhouses. France is really good. So there's a lot of good basketball out there in the world, and it kind of makes it fun because I like to think of myself as a really creative coach as well. Mm-hmm. I don't like doing the same thing everybody does. I always find different ways to play, different ways to guard, and a big part of it was that 2023 tournament.
So you make your way to Idaho, and that's via Carrie Amy, who spent 1 year at Idaho before heading to South Dakota. However, the success of Idaho heavily John Newley for 15 seasons, and he had a lot of success both in the WAC and the Big Sky, winning 3 tournaments, but a lot of stability with Idaho for many years. And then there's change on the horizon, and Carrie Amy is there for just a year, and you take over the reins at Idaho. Did you know, Arthur, that you were going to have a defensive strategy? Was that always something that was in your playbook?
Honestly, I was always more of an offensive coach.
I wondered. I've been wanting to ask you that.
San Francisco, I helped a lot of our offense. With Coach Amy when she was here, I was kind of running our offense a little bit. It's one of those things, as a coach, I think you have to adapt to your roster. And with everything that happened that year with Coach Amy leaving, and we lost some recruits in the process, had to finish the roster. I mean, we had 13 new players for that year.
Right.
So
that's significant gaps to fill.
Yeah, no doubt. And I had to figure out what works for that roster. And I feel like that year we had more defensive-oriented players and offensive-oriented players. And part of the reason is what Coach Amy does, too. That's her philosophy. She likes to defend. She likes to grind it out. She's one of the best defensive coaches I've ever worked for. So we built the roster a little bit for her until I took over, and then I had to sprinkle in a few new players. But I figured out pretty early in the summer that was going to be that team's identity. We didn't have the athleticism or the same offensive talent that we had this year. So I had to adjust a little bit of how I coached. This year we've been lucky that our roster is completely different, and I could go back a little more to the offensive side. But I think it made me a better coach too. You have to adapt to your roster, and you have to always keep reinventing yourself.
Well, that year that you did take over, you're 5th nationally in defensive rebounds, you're 11th nationally in total rebounds, 10th nationally in opponent shooting percentage. All of these things lead to good things on the offensive end. I mean, those are huge numbers, but you take a look at a system like that, and I love to hear you say that it's personnel, right? I mean, you are going to base it on who you have, and I have to talk about Olivia Nelson. I mean, I know she's no longer playing for you, but we got to stop for just a second and talk about the newcomer of the year. And she comes in, immediate impact player, first, team all Big Sky. Can you talk just a little bit about her play?
Yeah, I knew from the first practice that Olivia was going to be a coach after she graduated. She's just so competitive. She loves playing basketball. It was refreshing to coach her. Because, a lot of times you get through the grind of the season and kids are tired, you're tired as an assistant, as a head coach, and everybody's kind of gets in that. It's almost like becomes a business, and she was always smiling when she was playing basketball. Like I remember one of our first practices, we scrimmaged a lot that year because we had a lot of new players. So we had been practicing probably for around 2 hours already. So I ended practice, and then in the huddle before we broke and we kind of recapped the day, Olivia was like, "Can we play more? Can we keep playing?" Like, she just has fun with it. Basketball is fun for her. Life is fun for her. She brings a different energy. She never has a bad day. She's very competitive, and she'll get frustrated when things are not going her way or going right. But I felt like our team fed off of that. We had a player on our team that when things weren't right, she wasn't afraid of calling people out or kind of taking the ball and say, okay, this is what we're going to do now. We have to figure our stuff out. So she was a very special player. I only had 1 year with her, but I think she's probably going to end up being one of my favorite players I've ever coached because of how she approached every day, her intensity, her attention to detail. I mean, she was super good in scouts. Like I said, I'm very creative with how we guard, and we always have specific coverages to each matchup. And she would always ask a ton of questions. If I showed something, she'd say, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? What if things that the other team hasn't even shown on film, but you just think at the next level, to better prepare ourselves. So it made me a better coach too, because I knew that before I presented something on the court, I had to really dissect it, because I knew Olivia was going to ask all the possible scenarios that this could go wrong.
I love that. Well, heading into the tournament, you have 18 wins last year. You're a number 3 seed. You hit a surging Montana in the tournament, and I think they really turned some heads this last year with making that run. Can you talk about how the year ended and what motivation you took heading into this season?
Yeah, we weren't happy with how the season ended. Mm-hmm. I felt like we peaked pretty early. Up to January, we're playing really good basketball. But one of the mistakes I think I made last year with the team is once we realized we were good and we had a chance, we weren't very deep, so I was really afraid of injuries and try to keep us healthy. Mm-hmm. So I felt like our practice became a little lighter and more scout-specific, or really try to be intentional with what we did. And that resulted us to lose a little bit of the edge we're playing with early in the year, because we came into the season as people picked us 8th or 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever it was in the Big Sky polls. So we had something to prove, and we played with a chip on our shoulder. But once we proved we were one of the top 3 teams in the league, I felt like we lost a little bit of that edge.
Isn't that such a balance as a head coach, though? I mean, I think you look at your non-conference and then your conference, and then it's like the tournament, you just start completely over. So some of that is trying to figure out when to peak and trying to play your best basketball in that week in Boise.
No doubt. And then, like you said, we end up catching a Montana team that they were playing their best basketball that time of the year. I joke with Nate right after our game, because we're both in similar situations, right? Try to prove ourselves and to keep the job and get a chance to coach longer. So I texted him, was like, if there's anybody that it was okay to lose to, I hate losing and I was pissed, but it would be to you. But now you got to make it worth it and make it all the way to the championship. I sent him that text right after our game.
Yes, so, and they've certainly felt the pressure, right? I mean, this year they're struggling, and I look at it as a lot of teams that have those bumps in the non-conference. It could be a different scenario once it starts over here after Christmas.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we're in the right track now. We've been very intentional about talking about postseason and when we want to be peaking, and we're still trying to figure out our rotations. It helps having a lot of returners, because now you can really focus on the details instead of just learning how to play together. And last year, because of the roster that we had, I just had to scrimmage as much as we could early. So when the season started, we're ready to play games.
Well, Hope Hossman and Kira Gardner, 2 premier players in the league, both earning Big Sky Player of the Week honors back-to-back there. Idaho was just cleaning up on all the awards. But talk about those 2 leaders for your team this year.
Yeah, they've been unbelievable. Kira is somebody that I watched her a little bit out of high school, but she made it pretty clear in the recruiting process that she liked to stay in this area. So he came down to WSU in Idaho at the time when she was coming out of high school. And luckily for me, Drew had developed a really good relationship with her. So when she got on the portal, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to go after her. And I just think her style fits better with how we want to play. She's a player that thrives with a lot of freedom. You got to live with some bad decisions here and there from Kira, because she's such a creative player. But I'm a creative coach too, so I think it's the perfect fit for her. She's in the perfect system. She plays super hard. She leads. She's the type of player that will lead more by example than vocally. She doesn't talk as much, but she's going to show up every day and play really, really hard. And then Hope on the other end, she's great at managing the roster. She's everybody's friend. Everybody on campus knows Hope. Everybody loves her. She's everybody's favorite player. Coach Ford, our football coach, his daughter has a Hope Hassman shirt, and she loves watching her play. So she truly is the personification of what a Vandal needs to be. She came here, she wanted to come here out of high school, didn't get recruited by Coach Newley. When she got on the portal, we played against Fullerton, and the first thing she told me is that you guys just look like you had so much fun out there. I want to be coached by that staff. So she came in from day one, she was all bought in. To give you an idea of how much Hope is about the Vandals, at the end of the year when we lost to Montana, Hope gave me a list before we got on the bus. She was like, these are the players I want to play with if they ever get in the portal. And there was like Big Sky players, WCC players, like, well, Hope, we got to wait for them to go in the portal first to see if they're actually going to transfer. But that's how invested she was. She knew she wanted to stay. She knew we wanted to compete for a championship. And she's kind of been the heart and soul of our team this year.
Well, right out of the chute on November 3rd, you had a tremendous win where you beat Washington State on their home floor. And it really just kind of sent shockwaves through the conference of, okay, here Idaho is. They're picking right up this year, and they're going to be a dominating force. Can you talk about that game? I mean, it was a real close game, 87-85. You won by 2.
Yeah, I could not have written a better script if I was trying to create a movie, especially for our team and for Kira. We knew it was going to be a tough game. I mean, Coach Etheridge has done a great job. I have a lot of respect for her. But it's a big game for this area. Our fans are excited about the game. There was a lot of people there for both teams, fans from both teams, and the way he ended with Kira making those big shots to bring us back into the game, and then at the end getting the game-winning block, right? I don't think it could have gone better for us. It was a huge win for our team, huge win for our program. I think right there I saw how special we could be, because the team was happy not only that we won the game, they were happy for each other and for what he meant for Kira, what he meant to the program. And I think that says a lot about how connected our group is when they get so excited about a win like that. And it is a big win,
right?
But it's the first game of the season, right? It's not like we won the championship yet. But right there, I saw how much our players meant for each other. And I think that win kind of set the tone for the type of season we're going to have.
Well, Kira Gardner, she finishes with 26 points. Hope Hassman has 17. But one thing I noticed is you had 9 kids that scored in that game. They gave you something. Yeah. And that shows a lot. And obviously, minutes are spread. Everyone's fighting for minutes. But that's pretty impressive that you had contributions from so many players.
Yeah, I think that's who we are this year. We're so deep. Even this past game against Denver, when we were missing one of our best players with a concussion, and then we had 3 starters in foul trouble, we still had the bench contribute really, really well. I mean, we're top 20 in the country in bench points per game right now. And it's something that we didn't have last year, and it allowed us to play better offensively and play faster this year as well, with how good our bench has been and how deep we are. I do think we probably have 12, 13 players that could all be starting at some Division I program in the country.
Well, it was a very dominating win against Denver. I watched part of it, but you just killed them on the glass. I think the finals, you must have had 25 more boards than them. And that has to feel good. And you're heading into a pretty big, pretty intense stretch here with having to head to Cal and then head to Utah State. So these are going to be some really important games down the stretch here.
Yeah, rebounding has been one of the keys for us. When the season ended, I kind of sat down with our staff and I talked to some of my friends in coaching of how we want to play moving forward and what we want our identity to be. And rebounding has always been important to me. When I worked for Molly Gunnebauer at USF, she's probably one of the coaches that get her teams to play the hardest out of anybody in the country. So that's part of my identity as well. And we coach rebounding hard. It's one of those things where I believe as a coach, you shouldn't talk about something if you don't want to talk about it. And if you want to talk about that your team's not a great rebounding team, you have to work on it. So we work on rebounding every single day. Crashing the glass hard is important for us. We want to generate those extra possessions. We want to score a lot in the paint, have second chance opportunities. And because of our depth and the pace we're playing at this year, we kind of talked about it. If we can play at this pace, we can rebound hard, we can play hard defense. At some point, teams are just going to get tired. And I feel like that's kind of what's been happening in a lot of our games is when it gets to the second half, the other team is exhausted of playing against that type of pressure, that type of pace. A little bit what Montana State does. We don't press as much as they do defensively, but they also just get people tired. And I feel like that's the recipe for success in the Big Sky.
So that was going to be my next question, is to just talk a little bit about the Big Sky. Are there any teams that are really standing out? I mean, obviously Montana State has rebounded this year after a lot of questions, right? I mean, they lose Mara Dykstra to the transfer portal. They lose Esmeralda Morales. And so you just think, how is she going to do this? Rebuilding. But there has been some, play with Taylor Cherrick and Addie Harris that they have stepped up, and they've just given them really consistent basketball.
Yeah, I think the Big Sky has a core of coaches that, in my opinion, are some of the best coaches in mid-major basketball. If Trish and Seton, they're always going to be good. They're never going to have a down year. Everybody was talking about how much Montana State lost, but they still got first. Everybody knew what Trish is capable of. I mean, I think she does an amazing job. I try to learn a lot from watching other coaches in the league, too. And I think those two, they've been in the league the longest, and they are really good. I think Montana State's going to be really tough to beat. Idaho State's going to be really tough. I think Northern Colorado's having a great non-conference so far. They also return a lot. It's hard at our level to have a lot of returning players because it's so easy for people to just transfer out. looking for bigger and better opportunities. And I feel like Northern Colorado and Idaho State, they return a lot of their core. And you can see that shows in the games. I think Montana's going to be really good. They played a really hard schedule. But once they start playing teams around our level, I think they're going to be very, very solid. Sac State is going to be really good. I mean, I think the league is wide open. There's a lot of teams that you just can't take a night off. Every single night, anybody can beat anybody.
When I look at the camaraderie around the Big Sky, I do feel like the Big Sky Conference is a relationship league. I've been calling, this is going to be my 12th year now, Arthur, calling the tournament. And I feel like the coaches have really embraced me. They embrace other coaches. We have a couple of new faces this year, Carly Barres and Laura Dinkins. What do you have for friendships or relationships with other Big Sky coaches? Do you text with them or talk with them about upcoming teams, or how deep does it go?
The thing I've been most impressed with is everybody seems to want the Big Sky to be good. It's really easy sometimes when you're competing against each other to just hope the other person loses in non-conference, right? Because you're competitive and all that. But I feel like we truly want the league to be the best we can be. I got a lot of text messages from Big Sky coaches, even ones I don't normally talk to after we beat Washington State. Or we'll help each other with scouts. Coach Kalhoff and I are really, really good friends. I got to develop a great relationship with Aaron.
That's great.
So he's awesome. We're always talking to each other after wins, after losses. When we see other coaches on the road, we're very, very cordial. I love Seaton. I like Trish. Jody's been a great help, too. We're right next to each other. So when we play same teams, sometimes we exchange information and try to help each other. So I truly think that all 10 head coaches in the Big Sky this year, they want to make the league better. So they're trying to help each other, and they're willing to, if you reach out, they're willing to help.
Okay, a couple questions. What is the toughest place in your eyes to play in the Big Sky?
There's 3 that I think are very hard. NAU is always a tough place to play because of the elevation and travel. It's not the easiest place to get to.
It is not easy to get there. Being a former player from Montana, I feel like there were always something going on with flights getting into Phoenix, and then we'd hit like a weird freak snowstorm driving up to Flagstaff. So, okay, really good point that's a tough spot to get to.
Yeah, and they're paired to Northern Colorado, so if you're playing their second, you got to go to Denver and then drive to Greeley and play a late night game on Thursday, and then the next day go back to Denver, fly to Phoenix, drive to Flagstaff. It's very draining. Plus the elevation makes it hard too.
Yes.
Then the other 2 that are always hard is Montana State. I think the attendance that they have, they draw really good crowds. I've only played 1 time, 2, I guess now with Kerry at each of those places, but I always feel like they have a lot of fans and they have a lot of pride of playing at home. It means something playing in their arena, and they don't want to lose home games. Nobody does, but I think those 2 programs, because of the history, it adds a little bit of extra pressure there too. But they're also the 2 most fun places to play, because when you're in that type of environment, if you're a competitor, you want to beat them there.
Right. And it is really fun to play in front of fans, right? I mean, and you're really growing that in Idaho. I feel like they've gotten behind women's basketball. Moscow is getting more and more into women's basketball. It seems every year your attendance is increasing.
Yeah, I mean, we have a beautiful arena, and I think winning helps, right? The program hasn't had a lot of consistency in the last 5 years, but hopefully now we do. And I think we can see that with fans showing up. It's one of those things that as coaches we can demand people to show up, but you got to give them a product that they want to see too. So I feel like the way we're playing this year and last year is really drawing people's attentions, and we've been able to put some butts in the seats.
So, Coach Moreira, do you have any mentors that you reach out to and help guide you, that you want to give thanks to as a part of your coaching journey?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I would not be where I am today without Coach Pat Fuscalda and Rich Haywood at Sonoma State. Coach Fuscalda retired a few years ago, but he was the head coach when I went there, and Rich was his associate head coach that took over for him. And now that Sonoma got rid of their athletic programs, he's an assistant coach at UC San Diego on the men's side. Those 2 kind of taught me a lot of what I know. I remember Coach Fuscalda has a little bit of ADHD, so he struggles to focus sometimes. My senior year, I was so invested into coaching that he would call me on a Tuesday and say, "Hey, Coach, hey, Art, do you want to come recruit with me?" And Tuesday would be my busiest day of class. And I'm not going to share this with my players because I don't want them to do that. But then I'll say, "Oh, no, Coach, I have no class today." And then we'll just skip all the classes and go recruit. And then a couple of weeks later, it'll be a Wednesday. He said, Tuesday's your free day, right? So you can go recruit today. I said, no, coach, you got it wrong. Wednesday's my free day. So, I would not have become the coach I am today without Coach Fiscal, without Rich. Molly Goodenbauer at USF gave me my first opportunity to be a Division I coach, and I learned a lot from her. A lot of what you see from us defensively and rebounding came from her. Obviously, Coach Amy. And then one that I didn't work for, but kind of got me into coaching is Coach Dale Harris that coached the Lakers back in the day. And I got to meet Coach Harris when I was in Brazil still. He came to run a clinic there, and then we stayed in touch. I still text him all the time. He calls me after games. He sends me emails. We have a really good relationship. And this summer, one guy that helped me a lot and I didn't have a connection with before was Thiago Splitter, that is now in the NBA, former Brazilian player. When I realized I wanted to play fast this year, I watched his teams at Paris and I said, that's how I want to play. A lot of our transition concepts this year came from my conversations with Coach Splitter, watch his team play, and then Drew and I sat together and kind of designed our offense, a lot of based on what they did.
And if you had to come up with one word to describe Idaho basketball, what would it be?
Relentless and tough would be the two biggest ones.
That
That's
is great.
the most important thing for me. I'm okay. Obviously, you never want to lose, but I can handle losing if the other team just played better than us. I hate when we lose games because we weren't tough enough and we didn't make the 50-50 plays or we got out-rebounded, because I think it takes no skill to do those things. That's a given. You have to do that every single night. And then if you catch a night where you're making shots or you're passing well the ball, then you can play really, really well.
Well, Coach Moreira, we're at the end of our interview, and I could just keep going and continue to ask you more questions. Is there anything that you want to add to this interview to let any of the listeners know about you and Idaho basketball?
Just tune into our games. I feel like last year we were a very good defensive team. This year we're playing really good on offense too. I think our style is fun. We want to play fast pace. We're going to rebound hard. We're going to defend hard, and we're going to score hard too and push the ball in transition. So if you haven't watched us play yet, make sure you do, because you're not going to regret it.
Coach Moreira, thank you so much. Your energy, your impact, your vision, you're not just changing Idaho women's basketball, but you're changing how the world views this sport. So keep going, and I can't wait to see how Idaho does, and I'll get to see you in Missoula and also in Boise. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you for all you do for our sport, too. I appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. We are taking you around the big sky in women's hoops with Hall of Fame coach Carla C.T. Taylor, former Weber State standout and the program's all-time winningest coach. Each week, C.T. joins me to break down the matchup storylines and rising stars shaping women's basketball across the Big Sky. Proudly brought to you by the Big Sky Conference. And I'm going to throw a link up on our social media pages and my website so you can get a 10% discount on tickets to Big Sky in Boise. It's never too early to start thinking about March basketball, March 7th through the 11th. We would love to have you join us in Boise. Welcome, NCT.
Thanks, Krista. Happy to be here again. Great things to talk about this week.
I just got official word from Mr. John Casper, the senior commissioner for the Big Sky Conference, that the Big Sky won the Big Sky Summit League Challenge 25-19.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
That's really exciting.
Right, the Summit League has some really good teams. I didn't follow the men as much, obviously, as the women, but that's a great accomplishment for the Big Sky.
So, CT, you were on a call this past weekend. Tell us about the game.
So I had the Weber State, North Dakota State game, and North Dakota State, a really solid team. They were led by a 6'3" junior post player, Kunin, and a dynamic player, hard to stop. But Weber State played very, very well. It was a great game to call, great game to watch. It was 40 all at halftime. And really the big difference in the game is North Dakota State came out and made a 7-0 run to start the second half. And Weber State kind of then were just playing catch up and ended up losing 72-79 to North Dakota State, but a great women's basketball game.
Well, and this is the same North Dakota State team that beat Montana State.
Right, 90-65, which was surprising. And I'm sure Coach Benford was not a happy camper, but they were solid all the way around. North Dakota State had outside players. They could shoot the three. They had the inside big girls, and Yeah, at North Dakota State, I might mention that's tough travel. Anybody that had to travel for any of the teams had a tough travel road trip.
Well, we talk about the travel in the Big Sky being so spread out. Then you combine that with the Summit League, and you've got the North Dakotas, South Dakotas, Denver, Oral Roberts, Kansas City, Omaha, St. Thomas. I mean, they have their own issues with travel as well.
Right.
So you combine that, and I know that the Montana teams had some trouble getting in and out of North Dakota. So weather is always a factor.
Yes, it is. At this time of year, you never know what you're going to get.
Well, some other teams that really played fantastic. The University of Northern Colorado with the sweep. They first beat Kansas City 72-59 at home, and then they go on the road at Omaha and won 71-60. CT, I am really liking Coach Krista Matteo's University of Northern Colorado squad.
Yes, they're a balanced team too. Really, they've got a solid inside game. And then they've got dynamic guards on the perimeter that can shoot it, can take it to the hole. And so the combination offensively, they're very tough to defend. And then the flip side is she mixes stuff up defensively and makes it hard for teams to score against them.
A couple people that I've been really impressed with, Erin Powell. She's the transfer from Chardwood College, the 6-foot sophomore. She gives Coach Matteo that added length. She's mobile. She's agile. She attacks the rim. Another, Julia Riley. She's the 6'1 senior, transfer from CSU Bakersfield. And I think that the narrative for UNC has been Nina George, Tatum West, and Nia Hall. And now you see these other, a couple other added elements to their offense, giving them good points. Powell and Riley finished with 14 and 17 points respectively against Omaha. That's really great for Coach Matteo.
Absolutely. And you talked about it earlier that Anna Hall wasn't starting, but she doesn't need to start. She's coming off the bench, and you have that depth in the post and the depth in the guard position. She's able to rest her kids. She's not just counting on those three returners, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. That's for sure.
I didn't realize that Tatum West, I've called a lot of her games. She is a junior this year. She's averaging 12, almost 13 points a game, plus 9 rebounds a game, CT. Yeah. But I didn't realize she was 6'2".
Exactly. And so those kind of combinations make it hard to defend her. And then also you get that guard rebounding ability from her. And again, a very, very good start for Northern Colorado, for the Bears.
One other team I want to talk about is NAU. They've had some struggles. Laura Dinkins, obviously in her first year, coming from Grand Canyon. They've lost quite a few here in a row. I don't really like to talk about losing streaks. Just not my thing, CT, to bring that up.
That's all right.
But I do feel like Naomi White has just continued, and we continue to talk about her as just being a prolific player, but she has been a force on the offensive end.
Yes, she is. And, their schedule's been tough, and it's kind of like Portland State started out a little bit slow, and now they've got 3 wins under their belt. They'll get there, and I think by playing a tough preseason, it'll get them ready for conference play. It's hard when you come in as a first-year head coach and trying to develop your system. We've talked about this, and then getting the players to gel and buy into your system, and she'll do it. She's been under some great head coaches, and she was a great player herself, so don't overlook Northern Arizona.
I think if you're Coach Dinkins, you've got to celebrate some of the moments, right? And I do think that it was not easy for them to host South Dakota State, number 2 for the Summit League. And I want to point out that they went on a 10-0 run to tie it up going into the half with South Dakota State. And that's pretty impressive. And they only had 6 turnovers, CT, in the game. So let's give a shout out to NAU. Hopefully some good things coming.
Yep, doing some great things. And, gain the experience from this preseason schedule, and then be ready to start conference, and we'll see what happens.
CT, there's been a tough deal up here in Missoula, too, losing Skyla Cisco, a dear friend of mine, a teammate of mine. Many battles spent down battling you down in Ogden.
Yes,
but just a tremendous player. And I want to get your opinion, being someone who coached against Skyla so much for many years there. What was your thoughts on the type of player she was?
It's sad to lose such a young player. And, I just think the sadness of it for everyone, not just, I can't imagine being her teammate and her coach, but, I knew Skyla well. We'd come in and play, and she just was a fiery player. She was tough on the defensive end. She was a general on the offensive end. She ran the offense. She was so fast, so much speed and quickness, ability to score, ability to distribute the basketball, to run the high-low when Rob's screaming on the sideline, high-low, high-low. She just a dynamic player, but even a better person. And it's just been sad to watch from afar what she's gone through at such a young age, and a loss of life for just too young, way too young. And I feel for all of you as teammates, and for Rob and Annette and Shannon who coached her. It just has to be devastating.
Well, CT, her service is going to be in Adams Center next Monday, which is very fitting. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fans that show up and want to show their condolences to the family. And it's just fitting that we celebrate her life in a place that meant so much to her. I agree with you on the fiery side. I will never forget as a sophomore stepping into a starting role with the Lady Grizz, which I was on the younger end of it, and the focus was not on me. It was more on Skyla and Greta. And so I'd get open a lot, right? Because nobody's keying on me. So I was open in a very big game in Dahlberg Arena, and I took a 3. And luckily, CT, I made the 3. But I saw Skyla come out of the peripheral vision, and she was like, let's go. But had I have missed that, I think she would have been like, what in the heck are you doing taking a 3? As like in a pivotal moment of the game. So I was like so excited I made this 3 in front of all these thousands of fans, but I was also equally happy that I wasn't going to have to deal with like the wrath of the point guard coming over like, what are you doing? Taking that shot.
She was a vocal player. We talked about it. She talked a little trash.
Oh, she would.
Some things, but I'll tell you what, she backed it up.
Yeah, she could get the ball. She was, what she was? She was a floor general. I mean, the game was completely in her control. And that is something that my dad recently told me. He's like, there was never a question about the game being managed when Skyla was running the show, because she just always had it under control. And again, just a tremendous player. But, she ended up like becoming this amazing ultimate Frisbee player. CT.
I read that in her obituary.
Yes.
That's not surprising.
She went into the Hall of Fame for that. She also was a tremendous hockey player in the Missoula community. And so I think that it's just like Skyla just continued to compete in everything she did. I mean, even when she was playing poker, we had many card games, and like Skyla was always trying to win at poker, at bowling.
I bet she was a good bluffer.
Yeah, exactly. But another fact that I don't know people really even knew, but she was an amazing track athlete in high school. She had a full ride offer to Stanford for track.
That's not surprising. As athletic as she was, she as fast.
Right.
So I'm sure a sprinter and a jumper, possibly because of her speed and quickness.
She holds the Class C record for high jump still to this day.
See, I'm not surprised.
Yes.
I didn't know that, but it's not surprising to me that she also did track. Now, where was she from? Malta?
Malta, Montana. There was quite a pipeline.
How big of a town is Malta?
Oh, my goodness. 2,000 people?
So pretty
total.
Small.
Yes. Yeah. Very small.
Wow. Well, that's a devastating loss for that community, for her family, for Lady Grizz family. Like I said, my heart goes out to all the Grizz fans, the Grizz coaches, the Grizz players. It's something that you just don't expect out of someone of that caliber as a player and a person that their life is taking at such a young age.
She just fought such a hard battle, too, CT, 6 years of her cancer battle. And I had such an amazing lunch with her back at the end of September. And, she was that type of person, such a good friend. We would have lunch, but she'd say, okay, I'll give you the medical update, but then we're going to not talk about that because I want to hear about everything else that's going on. But talk about looking at the glass half full. That was something that Skyla always did. And if there's anything that's going to inspire all of us and inspires people to keep living life, is just to live to your fullest potential. and
Absolutely.
go out and make it count.
Yep.
So that's what I want Skyla to be remembered by. It has been a tough year for the Lady Grizz family. We've lost two teammates. Malia Kipp passes,
I know.
and now Skyla.
And Malia Kipp, I was just shocked when I heard the news about her. And I remember her playing and what, a silent assassin. She was such a quiet player, but man, she could do so many things and so dynamic in the post. And
she almost became a Wildcat.
I know.
So, it was crazy to hear her mom, Deanne, tell the story about how her offer was lost in the mail from Rob.
And we would have had her. I would have loved to have had Malia.
She said, I think Rob kind of might have revoked his offer because I never got anything. So I think I'm going to go to Weber State. And so it was one of those. But isn't it funny how we relied on the mail back then?
Yes.
To deliver a letter of intent. And I still have mine. I signed it, dropped it in the mail.
Still have mine, if you can believe that. Mine's probably disintegrating in the box that's in it, so old.
Yeah, and it's different now. My son signed this last week with U of M for football.
Right.
And they sign it, CT, at 7:01 in the morning. They take a picture of it. They scan it. And it's
like the bank now.
It's instant. Yes. Right? It's instant.
It's so bizarre. I didn't know that.
So way different now. And then they have just graphics ready to go, highlights. We're just living in a different era now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're a proud mama and excited for your son to play for the Grizz, who are having a great football year.
Yeah, they are. There's a lot of good football going on up here in Montana, both down in Bozeman and in Missoula. So
UC Davis just won as well. I saw John Casper was at that game.
Pretty neat.
A lot going on in the Big Sky Conference right now.
There is. It's great to have 3 teams still playing. Well, CT, thanks so much. This was fun chatting hoops with you. Chatting about the Summit League, and we have some great games coming up. I know a lot of coaches have, finals and things they got to dance around with the holidays. Right. This final non-conference stretch, and then we'll be turning the tables and starting over, and that's going to get real interesting with conference rolling right after the new year.
I know, giving the student athletes getting through finals and then they'll get a little Christmas break, not very long, but enough time to go home and spend time with their families, be back, hopefully stay in shape when they're home for the holidays, right?
Right.
To not sit on the couch and eat bonbons.
Oh boy,
so
that's what coaches think about, though. Isn't that what you think about? Like, I don't want my kids just going home and eating the whole time and sitting there.
Right. We gave them workouts, and I don't know if they did them or not, because when they came back, you're right into conference right away. So the second season will start before we know it.
CT, it's always a treat to have you and your perspective. So thank you for joining me this week.
Thanks for having me, Krista. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Thanks as well to Arthur Moreira, head coach for the University of Idaho, for the insight and for taking the time with me today. And thanks to you for listening. This week's episode of the Krista Redpath Show is brought to you by the Big Sky Conference and Vertical Rays. Coming up next week, a great conversation with the University of Northern Colorado head coach Kristen Matteo.